George Parr, you are a senior diplomat at the British Embassy in Washington.
Yes, I am.
There must be a great feeling of triumph in Washington at the moment.
Well, modest triumph. Yes.
Yes, because there's so many countries in that region wanting to embrace democracy, apparently.
Yes.
What do you think has been the catalyst for this change?
Well, I think it appears that if you bomb one country long enough and hard enough, then the neighbouring countries are magically transformed.
Yeah. So this is really deliberate policy, is it?
Oh, yes. Oh, of course, yes. I mean, it's very, very easy to dismiss George Bush as a stupid, inarticulate oaf.
Why do you think that is?
Because that's what he looks like.
Oh, right.
But underneath that exterior, he's a man of amazing foresight.
So he foresaw all this, and not just the elections in Iraq, but people power in Lebanon and the Ukraine, and contested presidential elections in Egypt, and even local elections in Saudi Arabia for the first time.
Yes, well, he didn't only see it coming, he planned it.
Did he?
Yes, I mean, you think of those demonstrations a week ago in Beirut against Syria.
Yes.
Well, that was a complete vindication of George Bush's vision. And he said at the time, the people of America are on your side, and millions of people across the world are on your side.
But what about the 500,000 people who demonstrated in Beirut in favor of the Syrians?
Well, they don't count.
There's an argument for saying that these developments, welcome though they are not the result of George Bush's deliberate policy, but the result of random events, really. In the case of the demonstrations in Beirut, they were provoked by the murder of the former Lebanese Prime Minister. In the region generally, it was the death of Arafat and so on.
No, not at all. No, George Bush saw that murder coming.
He didn't do it, did he?
No. What happened was this. George Bush put pressure on Syria.
Yes.
By saying that although military invasion of Syria was out of the question, the matter was still on the table.
Right.
So the Syrians begin to feel very, very vulnerable. So they do the obvious thing. They blow up the man in Beirut whose death would be most likely to bring hundreds of thousands of people onto the streets, demanding that Syrian troops be withdrawn. So then Syria has an excuse to withdraw their troops. But the real motive was to bring the troops back into Syria so that they could fight against an American invasion.
I'm sorry, you've lost me there at some point.
I think a child of 6 could follow that.
But if all the Syrians wanted to do was to bring their troops home, I mean, they didn't need to blow anybody up. They could have just done it. Everybody would have been delighted.
But that isn't how the Arab mind works.
Oh, right.
Yeah, the Arab mind is very devious and convoluted and labyrinthine.
Labyrinthine, yes.
And George Bush, you know, he understands that.
Does he? Yes. If Syria do withdraw from Lebanon completely, it might lead to a Lebanese civil war yet again.
Well, that would be all right, because then American troops could go in and sort it out.
But then you'd be back in the same situation where you'd have foreign troops in the country and people didn't want them.
No, but these soldiers, the American soldiers, would be coming from a country which is democratic.
Yes.
Do you see what I mean?
They would shoot people democratically, yes.
Yes. Absolutely. And they wouldn't be coming from a place like Syria, where the president is only the president because his father was.
Yes, exactly. But if George Bush is so keen to spread democracy through the region, and indeed throughout the world as a whole, why does the United States still support so many undemocratic governments?
Such as what?
Well, in the Middle East there is Bahrain and Qatar and Oman and Kuwait and Saudi Arabia, and elsewhere there is Pakistan and Uzbekistan.
Yes. Yes, that's very true. But
and there's also countries like Jordan and the Yemen, which were supported, a great deal of support and aid came from America while they were still very despotic regimes. But as soon as they democratized their regimes, America cut back on aid. And indeed, in Yemen's case, cut it out altogether for a time.
What you have to understand is that George Bush understands the wellsprings of geopolitical change.
Can he spell it, though?
That's another question.
Yes.
That's another question. And what he realizes is that you have to create the conditions in which democracy can spontaneously flower.
What are those conditions, please?
Conditions mainly having very authoritarian and repressive regimes, and the nastier the better.
Yes.
Because eventually the population is going to say, I'm fed up with being totally miserable and,
yes.
Oppressed.
They'll become disenchanted.
And they become disenchanted.
Exactly.
Exactly.
That is why then George Bush is such an enthusiastic supporter of, say, of the dictatorship in Uzbekistan.
Precisely.
And why he welcomed the president of Uzbekistan, President Karimov, to the White House in 2002 as an honored guest, even though President Karimov is known for torturing his political opponents and arresting people and boiling them alive.
Yes. Because, you see, George Bush could see that eventually the Uzbek people were going to say, hang on a minute, I think I'd rather have democratic elections than be boiled alive.
Yes.
And that is how progress takes place.
Exactly.
I mean, the most shining example, of course, are the elections in Iraq.
Yes, they were very successful. But, I mean, the trouble about democracy is that sometimes it gives you results you don't want. I mean, for example, in the Iraqi case, what will happen if, say, at the end of the electoral process next year, the country emerges as being dominated by reactionary religious bigots?
Well, that'll be fine. It'll be just like America.
George Parr, thank you very much.
Thank you.